Hey, all you Golden Eagles, you're listening to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. I'm your Tuesday, Thursday show host, Skylar Angus Barker. We've got a great show coming up with some information about Helen Rain talking about growing up in Natchez during the Great Depression, and Dr. Matthew Casey weighs in on the Gulf of Mexico renaming. And don't touch that dial because we have Dr. Mac Alford will share some things that you don't want to miss. You're listening to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio.
When you or your business sponsors programming on WUSM, you are getting more than recognition for your product. You are also gaining the appreciation of our audience who understands that your sponsorship provides their favorite programming. And research shows that the audience is more likely to patronize your business too. In addition, the cost of sponsoring programming on WUSM is tax deductible. To learn more, call 601-266-4287.
Estos son los sonidos de una cena. Una cena que casi no sucedió. Es una cena servida gracias a personas como tú. Debido a la crisis actual, 50 millones de personas pueden vivir con hambre este año. Feeding America está ayudando a los que más lo necesitan. Y si quieres, tú puedes ayudar también. Visita feedingamerica.org/en-español. Patrocinado por el Ad Council y Feeding America, la fuerza de 200 bancos de alimentos.
Welcome back to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. In USM Campus News, Southern Miss Golden Eagles take on the Super Bowl, a once-in-a-lifetime experience in New Orleans. Through a partnership with Ally Universal, our Golden Eagles were able to gain real-world experience to sport management during the Super Bowl by taking on crucial roles during the game. Dr. Chris Croft, an associate professor of sport management, and the one to make this experience a reality, had this to say. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our students to see both pre-event and game day events set up in operations of the Super Bowl. It was an enormous amount of work for everyone involved. But when it gave our students firsthand exposure to all the aspects of one of the biggest sporting events in the world, it's moments like these that show them what's possible in their careers. When the Super Bowl came, they worked security positions throughout the Superdome, and some students had the opportunity to see celebrities and high-profile attendees. In Hattiesburg news, Laurel Main Street plans to improve Trustmark Art Park. The Trustmark Art Park in Laurel will be seeing some improvements. The park has been a very popular place for events and visitors, and now Laurel Main Street will revitalize the park with new fencing, improved lighting, and adding irrigation systems for the oak trees. Michael McKinnon, a local architect, goes on to say, the vision is to kind of close it in a little bit more, make it a little bit safer. As far as right now, it just overflows in every direction. So we're going to try to create a couple of centralized entrances and exits. In Mississippi news, Mississippi could face health research funding cuts under Trump administration policy. With Trump's administration policy, several Mississippi universities and nonprofits could lose tens of millions of dollars in funding for health research. The plaintiffs of the lawsuit state that this agency action will result in layoffs, suspension of clinical trials, disruption of ongoing research programs, and laboratory closures. Dr. John Hall continues the statement by stating, without NIH funding, we would never have been able to make substantial advances in understanding the pathophysiology of major diseases such as hypertension, heart failure, obesity, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. In national news, National Park Ranger fired from Dream Job on Valentine's Day and pens emotional viral letter. Things are not okay. Brian Gibbs was fired from his job as an education park ranger at Effigy Mounds National Monument in Iowa. He was unable to print his government records or access his government email after his shift. While grieving the loss of his job, he stated on a Facebook post, I am the highlight of your child's school day. I am the Band-Aid for a skinned knee. I am the lesson that showed your children that we live in a world of gifts, not commodities. The gratitude and reciprocity are the doorway to true abundance. not power, money, or fear. I am the one who taught your kid the thrush's song and the hawk's cry. I am the wildflower that brought your student joy. I am the one who told your child that they belong on this planet, that their unique gifts and existence matters. We'll be right back with sports and weather after a word from our sponsors.
Sponsorship comes from American Graphics. Located at 8 Commercial Warehouse Drive in Hattiesburg, American Graphics provides custom screen printing and embroidery. They can be reached by phone at 601-602-2277. And the website is goamericangraphics.com. American Graphics, printing at its finest.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Southern Miss Radio. Welcome to some sports news. Baseball plays host to Mississippi State Tuesday night at Pete Taylor Park. Southern Miss is going up against in-state foe Mississippi State at Pete Taylor Park, Hill Dundon Field, tonight at 6 p.m. The game is available on ESPN Plus, as well as the Southern Miss Sports Network. Our Golden Eagles have started the season with a 4-game sweep with Lafayette, outscoring the Leopards 39-13. This is our first 4-game sweep since beating Middle Tennessee in 2021. Make sure to come on out and support your Eagles. Southern Miss downs Nichols for first win of the season. Our Southern Miss men's tennis team picked up the first win of the season with a 5-2 victor over Nichols on Sunday afternoon in Hattiesburg. The Golden Eagles secured the doubles point with wins on courts 1 and 3. Southern Miss will take a break before resuming play on Friday, February 28th against North Alabama. Let's go, Eagles! To keep up with all the Golden Eagles sports activities, head on over to southernmiss.com. Now for your weather. It's currently 55 degrees, and we're going to be getting some partly cloudy skies today, with the highs in the low 60s and the lows in the low 40s. There's about a 90% chance of rain this evening, which is most likely to appear after midnight. Our humidity is at 44%, with our wind moving at 3 miles per hour. Up next, we have Helen Rain talking about growing up in Natchez during the Great Depression. Check it out.
This is Mississippi Moments, produced by the Center for Oral History and Cultural Heritage at the University of Southern Mississippi and supported by the Mississippi Humanities Council. I'm Bill Ellison. Helen Rain grew up living in her grandfather's antebellum home in Natchez during the Great Depression. She remembers the genteel lifestyle and how they entertained themselves without a lot of money.
The property grandfather's house was owned was 2 doors from the antebellum home, the burn, and between it was Chattawall and grandfather's house, which is called now the Brandon House. And it had a deep backyard, and in this backyard was a storeroom. Grandmother had renovated with French windows and Dutch doors, and the victrola was down there. Grandmother used to give teas in the garden and invite all of her lady friends, and we children all dressed in our Sunday best and carried trays of sandwiches and cookies and offered them to the various ladies, who nearly all thought how lucky we were to have such a nice backyard to play in. And I thought it was kind of strange that they would think that.
Bill Ellison hosts Voices of Our People World War II, a new podcast from Mississippi Moments, sponsored by the Mississippi Humanities Council. That's Voices of Our People World War II, wherever you get your podcasts.
That was Helen Rain. Coming up, we've got a special guest that you don't want to miss.
You may not realize how important 3 letters can be. For a patient who needs type A, B, or O blood, these letters can mean life, but there simply aren't enough people giving blood. Without more donors, hospitals may not have the blood needed to save lives. That's why the American Red Cross needs people to help restore the A's, B's, and O's that are depleting each day. You are the missing type patients need. Visit redcrossblood.org/missing types or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to make your donation appointment today.
Welcome back to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. Now, please give a warm Golden Eagle welcome to Dr. Mac Alford. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, Skylar.
That's absolutely amazing. I'm happy that every single time that we have a guest on that they're doing well, and that's just amazing. For first and foremost, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a professor of botany here at the University of Southern Mississippi, and I'm also the new University Forum Director, which means I'll be bringing in speakers for our premier speaker series on campus. I'm a native of Liberty, Mississippi, and after going off to university and grad school and teaching 1 year in Ohio, I came back here to Mississippi, and I love being here.
That's awesome. And you just mentioned it earlier, and we were also talking about it before the show was live, but I understand that you're a professor here at USM. Can you tell us about what you provide for our students?
Sure. Well, as professor of botany, I teach our general botany class. I also teach a plant systematics class, aquatic and wetland plants class. I teach a graduate class off and on, and then other classes. And as I mentioned, I'm now overseeing the University Forum. So plant courses that have to do with plants, students eventually will have to pass through me. And I think that's pretty important because plants are central to our lives.
Yeah.
Can't eat without them. And in fact, you can't even drive your car without them because we're mostly burning, when we say fossil fuels, those fossils are from plants that converted sunlight energy millions of years ago. And now we're just bringing it out of reserve and burning it in our cars today.
Wow.
Now, most of my research is focused on tropical biodiversity. So I have the good pleasure of going to the tropics and finding new species and describing them and all of that fun expedition work.
That's really cool. And for anyone who doesn't really know like what botany is, can you tell us about like what exactly that is?
Sure. Well, it's basically the science of plants, but traditionally it's the science of plants and fungi and all the other organisms that don't fall under the categories of animals and bacteria.
Okay.
So we cover all of those pretty much in botany.
Okay, cool. And when it comes to these, the tropics that you get to actually visit and the plants that you find there, can you tell us about what any of your findings led to?
They've led to these monographs, basically books and papers describing new species of plants and how they're related to each other and to other plants and how they're pollinated and then how they're distributed, how their fruits and seeds are distributed around the world.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun work. In fact, I study a group of plants that has super small flowers. And we're talking like 2 millimeters wide.
Yeah.
And so they're mostly ignored because when you go to the tropics, you want to see big flowers. You want to see bananas and orchids.
Yeah.
So they've been more or less ignored. And I enjoy things that sometimes get ignored. And it turns out that these tropical plants are pretty closely related to our willows and cottonwoods. But we didn't know that 20 years ago, but now we do.
That's amazing. So you're a beloved professor here at USM, and it's very evident by your Rate My Professor. Do you know that you have a 4.5 out of 5 with a 100% would take again on Rate My Professor? How do you feel about that?
I guess that's good. I don't know about the would take again. I don't know if that's because they failed the first time. I hope not. I do try to make it fun because I know that a lot of biology majors, may not want to take a class on plants if they plan to be a vet or a doctor or a dentist or whatever. And so I try to make it fun and connect it to their lives as much as possible.
That's really cool. And I know for certain with a rating like that our students absolutely love you. And I'm sure that our students that are listening in have already heard about you before, and especially with the introduction that you gave us, I'm sure that a lot of students would recognize you. But that's absolutely amazing that you're like allowing students to like live through this science and not just be like reading a textbook and going through all these like aspects where it's just like it's a part of being a student, but like nobody enjoys reading textbooks. It's just a hard thing to juggle, but it's amazing that you're doing that for our students.
Yeah, and it's fun to get students involved because science is all about doing and exploring and having questions and so on. And I always tell my students that most young people have the science beaten out of them by the time they're 6 years old because, you know, kids are always saying, well, why, or how, whatever. And so eventually it's just like, oh, okay. But I like to encourage students to challenge things. Why is it this way? And then how do we learn about those things? And the great thing about botany in Mississippi, I mean, this year may be an exception, but normally we have lots of cool plants out pretty much 11 out of the 12 months of the year. Even now, after the snow and the big freeze a couple weeks ago, we already have some spring weeds popping up here and there. And so in the class I'm teaching right now, we can just go right out and look at them.
I love that. I absolutely love that. But for our main event, this event that's coming up, what exactly is the Maximizing Your Academic Conference experience? What is that?
This is a workshop that is sponsored by the graduate school, and we've done this before. This is to help graduate students and also undergraduate students who do research when they go to conferences. So conferences are where we go to share our research and also to network with other people.
Yeah.
And usually these are fairly focused. So for example, I go to a conference called Botany.
Yeah.
It's in the title. So, you know, the nation's botanists show up and present their work, and we listen to other people's talks to see what they're doing. We look at posters. We have social events. Because, of course, a lot of these people we know and we've interacted with, perhaps we've worked with before. And so this workshop is to help people who are new to conferences learn sort of the best practices. You know, how do you dress? How do you behave? How do you network properly? What are some of the things one might want to avoid? So we also we go through a set of case studies showing, you know, what students have done well and what students have not done so well.
Right. Well, that's extremely handy because like a lot of like actual like business, like either business attire or business regarding how like a student would present themselves, it's like a lot of things where it's like it's trial and error. So actually having a workshop where someone can come in and like actually learn what is tried and true method without having to go through the falling method, it's absolutely amazing. I understand that you're working alongside Dr. Kelsey with this event. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Dr. Kelsey Bonfils, she's one of our star faculty here at USM. She's, in fact, the Nina Bell Suggs Endowed Professor, and she's in the School of Psychology. Her expertise is in schizophrenia, mental illness, sleep disorders. She has a paper on professional burnout that's, I think, been cited more than 1,000 times.
Wow.
So we do this together because psychology conferences are a little different than the physical and natural science conferences. So we want to give students sort of a broad view of what different kinds of conferences look like.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely amazing that Dr. Kelsey works with like mental health. Because mental health is such a big thing, not just for students, but for our global population. I mean, I know students here have the Moffitt Center where they're able to get help from their therapists, but like I've heard from students that it's a complicated place and it's not the best, but it does offer help. So it's a very mixed bag that a lot of people talk about, but it's absolutely amazing that like Dr. Kelsey is providing this like voice for their students to be able to like either promote mental health or be able to talk about professional burnout, which is just something that all students are most likely going to run into in the future and have to like confront. And that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and she's doing the primary research in those areas.
Yeah.
I mean, even though she is a clinical psychologist, I mean, she's doing the experiments to see what kinds of things work and what kinds of things don't work. And
right. And this event, is it free for our students or does it cost money? Or...
It's free. It is
Okay.
supported by the graduate school.
Awesome. That's amazing. And you mentioned earlier that this is for mainly graduate students, but also undergraduate students can come in. Is it also open to the public or is it mainly just those students?
Mainly just those students. In fact, I mean, it's advertised to graduate students, but we have undergraduates who come who are actively involved in research.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people who will attend conferences. If someone were to come, just reach out to the graduate school and let them know that you're coming because, you know, oftentimes they'll have snacks or something available.
And is there going to be any snacks available for this workshop or no?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And can you give us a teaser about like what you guys would be talking about when it comes to this event? Like, for example, like dress code. Can you tell us anything about like what a student should wear to an interview and what they shouldn't wear to an interview?
Yeah, well, it's a complicated question, so we're going to go over the complexities of that because every conference is a little different.
Yeah.
And so, for example, I go to usually 3 conferences a year, and 2 of them are rather formal. So, you know, I would wear business attire.
Yeah.
And then one is rather relaxed. So we have one coming up in March, the Association of Southeastern Biologists, a very laid-back meeting.
Yeah.
If a person wore a suit, they might look a little out of place there.
Yeah.
But you know how biologists are. We dress down a lot anyway.
Yeah.
So it does depend on the conference, and so we have that discussion with students about learning about the conference and talking to your professor who might have gone there before. The main things we talk about, though, are how to network properly, how to look at posters, listen to talks respectfully, and how to take advantage of what they see. Because anytime you go to a conference, you're going to hear from, you know, let's just say you go listen to 3 dozen talks.
Yeah.
You're going to hear some good ones, and you're going to hear some bad ones.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity to look at the good ones and say, how can I make mine like these?
Yeah.
And to listen to the bad ones and say, what did they do that I should avoid?
Yeah.
Same thing with posters. When we go through a poster hall, there are hundreds of posters. And just walking through the line of posters, some will catch your attention and others will make you walk away. So it's supposed to be a great learning experience for the students to improve their own conference material for the future.
Absolutely. Well, I do know that we're running out of time, but is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
I guess the importance of a workshop like this is just to highlight the importance of collaborative work and research.
Yeah.
We live in an age with a rapidly moving research and knowledge, and so one has to network, and conferences are the place to do that, and we want to make sure our students get the full advantage of that opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mac Alford, for coming on today and providing a voice for our Eagles.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Coming up, we've got Dr. Matthew Casey weighing in about the Gulf of Mexico renaming. Check it out.
The Gulf of Mexico's name has been changed to the Gulf of America, which has caused outrage and confusion around the world. Dr. Matthew Casey explains more about the origin of the Gulf of Mexico's name.
Was the Aztec Empire. The people who lived in the Aztec Empire referred to themselves as the Mexica. And that's the origin of the name Mexico that we use today. And because that was such an important place for the Spaniards, that was a point of reference. And so that body of water that leads directly to this area, it was logical to call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Internationally, others outside of the United States may think of this as an inclusive deal.
People in Latin America often use the word America to refer not to the United States, but to every country in the hemisphere. And so if you leave the United States and you say America, people who are listening to you don't automatically think of the United States. If they're going to talk about the United States, they'll say the United States. And so by changing the name to the Gulf of America, some people who hear that might think of that as actually a more inclusive term and less about the United States than it probably was intended.
The U.S. Geographic Name System has yet to make the change. Until then, the name the Gulf of Mexico will remain. Stephanie Perez-Munoz, SMTV.
Thanks for listening to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. Huge thanks to Seb Hodges, our audio engineer, and Meadow Smith, our video engineer, for keeping this bird flying. Big shout out to our assistant producer, Sam Romeo, and our program director, Adeline Fields, as well as our executive producer, Ore Ide, and our GM, Dr. Wilbur Martin. Don't forget to follow SM2 Media on social media. I'm your Tuesday, Thursday show host, Skylar Angus Barker. Stay golden.